I really appreciate everyone being here again. I know I've said that, but I know everybody's very busy in their day, and I really appreciate everyone taking so much time. You know, one of the biggest changes that we've had this year is I am officially a South Dakotan. I moved my family here over the summer, and I have to tell you that, yay, thank you. I know I expect a little bit of a greeting. The seeds of me wanting to relocate here literally started during the first showcase that we had 2 years ago. I had no idea that all this stuff was going on, not just in Sioux Falls, but in South Dakota. I had no idea, and that's one of the reasons that we wanted to do this showcase, was to showcase this great technology. And I remember during one of the presentations, I thought, okay, I have 5 states, the Dakotas, Wyoming, Iowa, Nebraska, and I thought to myself, this is where things are happening right here. I need to be here. It took me 2 years and a really bad move, but I'm here, and it's definitely the center of where I should be, so I'm so thrilled to be here. We have a great program lined up for you today that will highlight all of these innovations. One of the things that we really decided to do this year was to get back to our roots of showcasing things that are going on already in South Dakota. Last year we had some presentations from some national companies that were great, but we decided to get back to the roots of what's already going on in South Dakota, because I'm amazed. I'm amazed this year, the things you're going to hear. And then we're going to end the program with something really futuristic, so we can draw you back again for our 4th annual, which, you know, I haven't talked to Vernon and Mark and Marianne about, but, well, you know, hopefully we'll be back here next year. First of all, we're going to have a great panel discussion featuring the University of South Dakota's Discovery Center and 3 innovative tech companies right here in South Dakota. We're going to hear also from experts on public safety, including a look at the technology that drives FirstNet, which is the national communications platform for public safety. And then if you look over to your left, we're going to see all kinds of cool stuff from Daktronics, and I am excited to see that, and I'm trying to figure out how to get that screen in my house, but I think they may miss it, so I might be out of luck on that. So we're also going to have a really interesting presentation from Sanford's Underground Research Lab, which sounds absolutely intriguing, probably way over my head, but it's again one of those things that I can't believe is happening in South Dakota. Then our good friend and showcase partner, Mark Schlanta from SDN Communications, will give us a look on how broadband connectivity is evolving. And then we're going to end the day with a cool presentation on smart cities, the Internet of Things, and 5G technology with a Q&A from Jody Schwan. During today's session, you'll see the hashtag, so if you're into social media, which I'm not smart enough to do, so usually someone does it for me, I'll be honest about that, but if you are into that sort of thing, please feel free to tweet away. And also we have a couple of giveaways, so before the day is over, please make sure you drop your business card into the fishbowl out on the front. We have a wireless charger donated from the AT&T store, and we also have a Bluetooth headphone set donated by SDN Communications. So before we jump into the program, though, I'd like to recognize some very special people, because I guarantee this would not have come together today without them. Vernon Brown from SDN, please stand up, and thank you very much. Mary Ann Boyd from the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce. She's probably working. Oh, perfect. Thank you. And then, you know, we're going to rename this showcase to the Nikki Grunley Showcase, because Nikki Grunley from SDN is basically the one who put this all together. So, Nikki, thank you so much. So our first presentation today, again, features the USD Discovery Center, which is our very own research and development community, and a panel discussion with 3 innovative local companies. To lead the discussion with the Discovery Center, please help me welcome Rich Naser, President of the University of South Dakota Discovery Center. Rich.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you AT&T and SDN and the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce and Industry for this opportunity. This is my first time having walk-up music. It's my first time wearing a headset, so I feel like I should be selling ShamWow or something like that. But really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about the USD Discovery District, what we're trying to accomplish there. But more excited to have these three panelists here, who are all founders of biomedical companies that are being developed right here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So really, the vision of the USD Discovery District is to create a collaborative environment where we have people and researchers, students, faculty, connect with innovators and entrepreneurs. And the idea is to commercialize new technologies, and the idea is technologies that not only impact our region, but that impact the world. So we're really excited, and I think you'll see that these three companies up here represent those types of activities. So this is a picture of the USD Discovery District from our master plan. So those of you who are familiar with Sioux Falls, this is located out by University Center, which is just out by 60th Street and Interstate 29. And this shows the 252 acres and our vision for that. Today we're focused on developing 80 acres out at the Discovery District, and this we think will take us 25 to 30 years to achieve this vision. We're really doing four things out at the Discovery District. We want to grow university research capacity, we want to grow new programs, and Dan Engebretson with Tailored Medical Devices is also chair of USD's Biomedical Engineering program. So you'll see how these things are connected, that you have to have the talent and the research capacity really to have this be a success. The next thing we want to do is we want to connect those resources with the private sector and foster entrepreneurship and commercialization. And then lastly, the Discovery District is really focused on building the infrastructure, building this community that's required to house all these activities. And why are we doing this? As I mentioned, it's going to take 25 years, and you can see the numbers for construction and roads and all those sorts of things, and taxes. But the real reason for this is the bottom line. 2,800 new jobs, and in the bioscience industry, those pay about $61,500 a year in South Dakota. So that's why we're doing this. It's about creating opportunities for South Dakotans, those who are from here, those who choose to live here, and having them be able to do things that can impact not only the state, but the world. This is being done through a series of partnerships. You can see all the partners up here. So it's the universities, it's the state, it's the business community, it's the city, it's the University Foundation for our first project. So this is a perfect example of what a public-private partnership is to drive economic development. The Discovery District is going to be a mixed-use development. I don't know how many of you are familiar with research parks, but traditionally research parks were these suburban developments where you had a business here, and then you drive a little bit down the road and you'd have another business, and kind of your traditional suburban business park. But how they've evolved is really to developing communities and neighborhoods. So the Discovery District is going to be mixed use. It's going to have a lot of research activities, but it's also going to have retail, it's going to have residential, it's going to have some entertainment and lifestyle amenities. And this is just a rendering of what that'll look like. So we'll have about 6 blocks that will really feel like a downtown environment out at the USD Discovery District. So we're really excited about that because we think that's the type of, you want to foster collision. You want your students and your faculty and your business people and your entrepreneurs and others all interacting and commingling. So that's the idea behind creating an urban environment for the Discovery District. And lastly, this is a rendering of our first project. So we just announced in June our first building out the USD Discovery District, and that'll be an 84,000 square foot building that actually 2 of these companies, Alumend and SAB Biotherapeutics, will be the anchor tenants for. So that'll be a 3 to 4 story building right on our main street, and these companies will begin taking the next steps of commercializing their products and bringing them to market. And then we do have additional space in that building for companies that are emerging out of our healthcare systems, emerging out of our universities, or that we recruit as well. So, and what I would say about this building is it's a perfect example of the public-private partnerships that are required to do this type of development. So the city has stepped up to help us with streets, sidewalks, parking. The University Foundation has stepped up to help with some financial support, as well as then the state of South Dakota in a very major way to make this project happen. So we're really excited about what's going on at the USD Discovery District, and I'm going to invite our first panelist up to share a little bit about his company, Dr. Dan Engebretson, who is the Chair of Biomedical Engineering for USD, but also the founder of Taylor Medical Devices.
Well, thank you all, and thank you, Rich, for inviting me to be part of this panel to discuss some of the exciting things that are happening in the region in terms of biotech and medtech development. As Rich has indicated, I've got a couple of different hats that I'm wearing today. One is as the president of Tailored Medical Devices, which is a startup medtech company that's based out at the Discovery District in USD's Gear Center. But also I'm going to be firmly wearing my hat as the chair of the Department of Biomedical Engineering for the University of South Dakota, which is also based out at the Discovery District in the Gear Center. So a lot of things are happening at the Gear Center. If you haven't been there, I do encourage you to come out and take a look. We've got a lot of cool things that are going on there. But Tailored Medical Devices, I think, is a good representation of how research and development can help drive economic development in the region. When you look at the technology that we've developed, which is a new treatment for peripheral artery disease. So one of the drawbacks of the Western diet is that as we get older and larger and the blood flow lessens to our extremities, problems result. And there's a lot of treatments out there for that. One of them is balloon angioplasty, which you can go into the balloon and open things up to improve that flow. And a few years ago, one of our researchers in biomedical engineering was chatting with Dr. Pat Kelly from Sanford Vascular Innovations, and he was describing problems he was seeing in his practice, and the faculty member said, well, I think we can solve some of those problems. And so they got together and developed a technology. The patent was just issued this past summer on that, a joint development between Sanford and USD, so a great partnership there. But the most important part, I think, of this is that we had a couple of students that were working on developing that technology as they were going. These are students that the state has invested a lot in their development, their education, and without these sorts of opportunities, they're going to leave. They want jobs, they want paychecks, all those great things. But because this technology has such a very viable market potential, we're able to craft a company. The students are employees. We're happy to announce that about a month, actually on September 1st was when the cash started flowing. We got a grant from the National Institutes of Health to develop that technology. And so by this partnership with Sanford, with the university, smart people, we're able to develop technologies to keep our talent here. And I want to see more and more of these sorts of activities happening in the region. The Discovery District will provide that environment that whenever Rich says collisions, I always think of the traffic circle that's out there, and we want to minimize those collisions, but we want all the other good collisions. One of the neat things, if you come out to the Gear Center, you're going to see the Alumend team is there. And that's in the same building that the Biomedical Engineering Department is. And so we've got a lot of those good collisions that happen over coffee and those sorts of things. And that's where ideas start, where ideas get developed, where companies get developed, and where the economy gets developed. So those are some of those exciting things that I think are happening at USD and at Tailored Medical Devices.
Thank you, Dan. So our next panelist is Dr. Ron Utecht, and Dr. Utecht is actually the founder and chief scientific officer of Alumend, so he's going to tell you a little bit about his company.
Well, thank you for having us here. It's exciting to discuss our technology and our story. I want to tell you a bit about Alumend. It is a company that is based on the innovations, the inventions that I had when I was professor at South Dakota State University. And now we are a wholly owned subsidiary of Avera McKinnon Hospital. We're an early stage drug development company. We're located in the Gear Center out at the University Center. We'll be one of the anchor tenants in the new building. We're excited about that. And I'd just like to echo what Dan said, and that is it's great to be underneath, so to speak, the biomedical engineering program. We have some equipment, they have some equipment, it complements each other. We've hired some of their graduates. That's been very good for us. We've hired a lot of students that have come out of both the public and private education system in South Dakota, so it's been a great place to be. Well, let me tell you a little bit about our structure. Again, like I said, we are a wholly owned subsidiary of Can't speak this morning, it's too early. Of Vera McKinnon Hospital. We are one of the 4 pillars of research there. We're the one with the name that doesn't tell what we do. But like Dan, we're really focused on peripheral arterial disease. Now, peripheral arterial disease is kind of the lesser-known cousin of coronary artery disease. It's well known because you have coronary artery disease, you have a heart attack, it's noticeable. Peripheral arterial disease is a slow degeneration of the blood flow in the legs, and what really happens over time is a loss of mobility, a loss of the quality of life. So this is what we do. I'll give you just a quick overview of our technology. Here we have just a diagram of a diseased artery, and what we do is we cross that artery with normal angioplasty type techniques over the wire. We bring a porous balloon in, we deliver our novel drug to that site. Now, the drug that we have is called a new chemical entity. It has never been through the FDA before. There is no history of safety or efficacy. So one of our challenges is to go through that FDA approval process and show that our treatment is both efficacious and safe. So we deliver our novel drug to the artery wall, and then what we do is we go in with just a plain old PTA balloon, we blow that balloon up to give us an increased luminal size, and our molecule, our new chemical entity, our drug, if you will, is actually light activated. So we put blue light into the artery wall, that holds the artery wall in the distended position. And over time then, as soon as we remove that balloon, we have maintenance of luminal gain, we have good flow. So we have not plain old balloon angioplasty, we have really a hybrid technology that makes that procedure better. So, a couple pictures here, I won't get too graphic. This is an artery, one that has been taken from an amputation. It's on the left side, this is just how we received it. You can see there's no internal lumen, there's no place for the blood to go. In the middle one is after treatment with just PTA, still no place for the blood to go. And after our treatment, you can see the artery on the right. The first thing you'll notice is that it has a lumen. It is open, the blood can flow through it. The second thing is that it's yellow. Our drug is actually a yellow compound, so whatever it touches turns yellow, at least for a while. It eventually is washed out of the system. I'm a chemist, I have to show you the structure of the molecule. If I didn't, you know, I just couldn't go home and live with myself. So there's the structure of our molecule. And when we went into the first trials, we actually made this molecule up at the Gear Center, met all of the requirements of manufacturing for FDA approval. It is a rather complex system, so not only do we have to make the drug, which is shown there in the middle, we have to make the delivery device, which is shown on the upper left, and we may have to make the light delivery system on the lower right. So we've had to innovate not only in chemistry, but also in the devices that are used for the treatment. So what's our future look like? We want to remain an early stage drug device discovery company. Some development, but we don't want to build products. We don't want to have a distribution center. We don't want to be a chemical manufacturer. So our goal is to send this out and eventually be acquired by one of the big players in the medical industry. So to do that, we licensed our technology to another company. At this point, it's again wholly owned by Vera McKinnon. It's called Elusive Biomedical. And we've hired into that company a team that is well versed in both drug device manufacturing. They will be continuing our FDA trials and seeking outside investment. Just so you know, to kind of end this up, we did receive approval a little bit over a year ago to go into FDA trials in the United States, and we have been working within that framework now for a little bit more than a year. So that's really our story. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron. So you can see exciting things, and I don't know that Ron mentioned it, but that technology actually came out of a university research center affiliated both with South Dakota State University, USD, and School of Mines also, I believe, or No, just the two, SDSU and USD. So really excited to see that come from a state research center all the way to becoming a product. So our next panelist is Dr. Eddie Sullivan. He is the president and CEO of SAB Biotherapeutics, and he's here to tell you about his company and all the great developments going on there. Thank you, Eddie.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate a moment to tell you a little bit about our company. In 1891, a scientist named Emil von Behring discovered that if you took serum from a horse that had been infected with diphtheria and transferred it into a human that was infected with diphtheria, they got better. And lo and behold, they discovered later on that there are these very unique proteins inside of our blood that fight disease that we call antibodies. And I don't have a slide presentation for you, so I thought I would demonstrate with a little charades here, but I'll explain what I'm doing. So an antibody just looks like this. It's a body with two arms that stick out. And these arms are made specific to bind to some foreign invader in our bodies, like a virus or a bacteria or a toxin. Well, what's unique about these is that humans make a human version. Horses make a horse version. Cows make a cow version. And if you transfer an animal antibody into a human, they recognize that as being a foreign protein. And so while it will make you better, it also has a side effect. And that side effect means that we would have a reaction to it. We call that serum sickness. Just because that's what they used to do. They used to transfer serum. But you know, we're still using animal antibodies today to treat disease. In fact, there are over 38 animal antibody products that have been approved by the FDA. Our company started with the idea that if we could produce the human version of these very unique disease-fighting proteins, but do it inside of an animal where we could vaccinate them or immunize them with diseases that were important in human disease and make the human version of antibodies that were specifically targeted to an extreme amount, a very, very high binding capacity to that disease, then we could use that as a natural way to fight disease. So our company started with the idea that if we could make cows that produced fully human antibodies and not cow antibodies, then we could create a human therapeutic that would be beneficial and treat a great deal of unmet medical disease. So what we did was essentially what is one of the most complex genetic engineering projects in the world. And I say that humbly. But what we did was we had to manipulate 12 different gene alleles in order to turn off the cow antibody genes. And then we had to replace those in a very unique way with what we call a human artificial chromosome that has the human version of the antibody genes. And we put those into these animals. And then we had to further engineer those genes to make them work inside of the cow's immune system. And so what SAB has today is a herd of cows that produce fully human antibody proteins. And because they're born with them, they think they're just part of themselves. And in fact, they use these antibodies just like they would use the cow version to fight their own diseases. But what we can do now is we take these animals and we can vaccinate them to things like seasonal influenza. And I want to first of all say, we are not competitive with vaccines. So everyone go get your flu shot, okay? That's important. But we know that the flu shot is not always effective. In fact, you've probably heard people say, I'm not going to get my flu shot because I got the flu shot and I got the flu anyway. Well, let me tell you, get your flu shot, because if you do get the flu, you'll likely have a better time of it than if you don't. So I want to encourage you, first of all, to do that. Second of all, sometimes influenza can be severe. And in fact, last season, we had a severe influenza season. In the United States alone, 30,000 to 50,000 people a year die from influenza. And there is no really good treatment for severe hospitalized influenza. We can vaccinate these animals to the influenza vaccine. and they produce the antibodies. And then when somebody gets sick, and severely sick with influenza, we can give them these antibodies as a natural way to fight disease. And so SAB Biotherapeutics right now has worked with the National Institutes of Health. We have conducted our first clinical trials in humans. That was actually with a disease called Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. We completed it last year, showed, in fact, that the antibodies that are coming out of our animals are identical to human antibodies, and humans react to them the exact same way they would if we transferred your antibodies into me. And not only that, but we showed that they were also safe. We had no serious adverse effects. We had a half-life that was identical to humans. And so our next step now is to move into sick patients, and that's exactly what we're doing with that Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. Right now, we are starting a clinical trial in Saudi Arabia, and we have also a clinical trial that will be starting this upcoming year with our influenza product. We also work in 3 other areas: oncology, autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes, and also inflammation. I will tell you that just from a business standpoint, a biotech company like ours goes through 4 stages of development. The first stage is developing the platform technology that we're using to develop these products. The second stage is to develop the products that fight the disease. The third stage is clinical trials. That's the stage that SAB Biotherapeutics is in right now, that clinical stage. And the fourth stage is commercialization. Commercialization of these types of products, much like Ron talked about, is not always just taking it clear through FDA approval. But in fact, it's partnering with other larger organizations who will take the licensing rights to this technology and develop it further. And so that's exactly what we're working on right now, is developing those relationships with those really commercial entities that will take this on into the future. So our business platform is that we will manufacture these products here in Sioux Falls. We are moving into the Discovery District and building manufacturing facilities there for manufacturing these products. We will sell the commercialization rights to other companies, and we will still manufacture them right here in Sioux Falls because of the unique manufacturing process that we have. And so that's just a little bit about us, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Ed. Apparently, I should have gotten my flu shot, so excuse me. So I do have some questions for the panelists, but also I believe there is a microphone that'll be going around the room. Excuse me, so if you have questions, maybe just raise your arm and you can ask them of the panelists. So my first question for the panel is, really, why is South Dakota a good place to commercialize your product?
Well, as the kind of the new kid on the block here, South Dakota has, I think, some great small-scale funding opportunities to do some of that early-stage development. If you look at the Governor's Office of Economic Development, they've got the Proof of Concept Fund, there's the I-6 Challenge Grant. These are ways where you can get kind of that $20,000, $25,000 to gather some early data to help start the de-risking process for technology development. And they've also got other programs that can help support students and things through the development.
I guess I would just focus on our workforce here. We don't have really the workforce that we can draw from that you might find in the Twin Cities. But with both the private schools, the public schools, we do have a great workforce. We have students that come through, they're willing to work, they're excited about their opportunity. One of the challenges that we're going to face in the future is making sure that we can keep that talent here and not have them move on to potentially greener pastures.
You know, we moved this project from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst and from Kansas State University in 2002 to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I will tell you, when we first moved to South Dakota, there was a law in the books called Amendment E that said that corporations could not own livestock in the state of South Dakota. Now, you can imagine for a company like ours, that would be a problem. And it certainly had the intention of protecting family farms, but had the unintended consequence of excluding us from being able to have our animals in South Dakota. When we brought that to the attention of the state government, I think it took about 2 months for our state government to be able to figure out a way to make it work. It would continue to be legal for SAB to have our animals in South Dakota. And so just recently, we have built a production farm about 3 miles north of Canton, South Dakota. We affectionately call that our production farm PHARM, but those animals have have a plasmapheresis parlor rather than a milking parlor, and we actually collect plasma from the animals 3 times a month, and that's their job for the best room and board and probably the best medical care that can be bought.
Thank you. So, second question is, what, if anything, makes this a more difficult or challenging process to do in South Dakota, maybe versus in another location? So, whoever wants to take that question first?
I have the microphone, I guess.
Here you go, Dr. Utech.
I think there's 2 things that we've come up with. The other side of it, again, is the workforce. It's just our students here tend to go out. We have to recruit them. We have to retain them. That's a little bit harder for us. I think the other thing is the investment capital. Dan said there was the opportunity to get the small grants. I think both of us have been able to hook into the resources we need now, but there's what they call that valley of death, where there's not suitable resources to take it from the small idea to the big idea where you can capture the imagination of a larger funding group.
And I guess I would echo those same challenges. I think one overarching challenge, not just in the Sioux Falls region, but really the state as a whole, is that I think nobody knows we got these sorts of cool things that are happening. So when kids are in middle school and kind of making decisions about what they want to do when they grow up, they don't even think about this as a possibility because they don't even know it's out there. And so that kind of feeds into that workforce problem. So whatever we can do to help increase the awareness of these sorts of opportunities and these activities, I think, can help solve that problem in the longer run.
You bet. I just wanted to echo what Ron said about investment. I will tell you that we're at the stage in our company where I spend a great deal of my time in New York City, Boston, and San Francisco. And I will tell you that we are making headway in getting some of the large and institutional investors to take a look at what we're doing here. And even make the trip out here. About 3 months ago, I had the opportunity to bring a Wall Street analyst out to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And when he came out here, I wanted to share with him not only what we were doing, but what was happening across the state. And I will tell you that places like San Jose and New York and Boston are taking note that there is innovation happening in the middle of the country, and it's not just flyover country anymore. And so we have a lot of work to do, but it is happening.
Thank you. And I think one of the reasons is we're really creating a new industry here in South Dakota. This industry does not exist today in a commercial fashion. So I think, we got to crawl, walk, run to get to that point. Before I ask my next question, are there any questions from members of the audience? Okay. Right there.
Sorry, I made you trek across the room. I'm Joni Johnson with South Dakota Biotech. Thank you, guys are awesome, by the way. I just was wondering if you could share with us some of the challenges it is to get to FDA and clinical trials, because I don't think people here really understand how long you've been in business and really what it takes to get there. And you guys have worked really hard, done an awesome job. So could you kind of go through that a little bit?
Sure, and I will tell you that this is a very different way of looking at product development and technology than perhaps what we would call our traditional tech providers, things like our cell phones and some of the things that maybe some of you work with, because it takes decades sometimes to get approval of new innovations and new ways of doing things through the FDA. It's very methodical. They have certain ways of doing things. Sometimes, perhaps we could argue that they're not always the best ways, but we have to ensure that not only the things that we are doing are safe, but that they actually have efficacy. And so it is a very controlled environment, highly regulated. My chief compliance officer told me the other day that he answers to 5 federal agencies on a regular basis. We have inspections on a regular basis from at least 3 of those agencies, and 2 of which we have to file reports with quarterly. So sometimes we have a lot of regulatory burden, and yet it's understandable that we have to be able to protect patients from over-promising and under-delivering, right? So.
I think the regulatory burden that we look at, it differs from other countries, but we've gone through both outside the U.S. and FDA approval process. It's just a matter of making sure that you've done basically good science, that you have ensured the patient is going to not have an adverse reaction, at least to the best one can determine, and that it's going to be efficacious. But it really comes down to record keeping, knowing your product, and being able to access that and defend what you're doing.
For tailored medical devices, we're quite a long ways from any FDA approvals that we'll have to do, but one of the things that we've been doing in biomedical engineering at USD is trying to prepare that workforce and have created new programming that really focuses on the regulatory process and things, so that at least students are getting trained in that to prepare them to be engaged in that complicated path to commercializing medical products.
Rich, we have 2 questions, 2 quick questions over here.
Good morning, Greg Clute with Dakota Land Federal Credit Union. I have a 14-year-old son, and I'm interested in delivering your guys' exciting message to him, and I wondered what your thoughts might be on taking the technology stories you guys have told and delivering that to our K-12 students so they can choose to be part of your workforce someday.
I'd say, first of all, have them give me a call. And seriously, I love to have students coming out to the Gear Center. For the past few years, we've had dozens, probably even into the hundreds of high school students through the HOSA group that comes through on tours. Routinely have the Edison Middle School Science Club come out. They started that club about 10 years ago. We were the first place they came to visit, and they come back every year, and we have them taking DNA out of strawberries and looking at flies under microscopes, and we just need to build that excitement. And so what I try to have as many kids out as we possibly can. So seriously, if you've got a 14-year-old kid and wants to get into this, give me a call. We'll have them come out and watch a student mess around in the lab. We got 3D printers, we got electron microscopes, we got all kinds of cool stuff. And anybody, give me a call. Come on out.
Anyone else want to take that, or are we good?
If we're good, we've got one other question here, and we probably need to keep moving.
Great.
Mike Fowler, Sioux Falls Tower and Communications. First of all, just compliments to all of you for what you're doing as pioneers within the state. This is exciting things that we're talking about, so congratulations to all of you. The question that I had was, you talked about some of the general challenges that you have coming from within the state of South Dakota. I'm just wondering, from a technology aspect, what are some of those challenges that you're seeing that you might have to navigate from a technology perspective, and then how are you addressing those?
We've come a long way as a state in the last 5 or 10 years. Governor Rounds' 2010 initiatives started with really building the research infrastructure of the state. That partnered with EPSCoR. We have gotten to the point that for equipment, I think that every place is going to need some piece of specialized equipment. We can go out and enter into an agreement with somebody. But through these programs, the universities have built up expertise, and in some cases expertise that is second to none, that you can't find outside of the state. Locally, we have worked with our investors to make sure that we have the equipment that is necessary on a day-to-day basis. So the equipment, the expertise has really not been a limitation for us.
I'll just quickly say that, I would say in our experience that we are definitely growing a research infrastructure and research enterprise within South Dakota that is truly world-class. And it has taken a while for us to get to the point where we have that, but it's important that we continue the effort, because not only is it important from a technology perspective, but also from workforce development and being able to raise up a generation of people that are going to continue this work and be able to grow the research enterprise within the state of South Dakota. It's happening. It's going to happen. I am excited to be a part of it, because we could be just another company in Boston, Massachusetts, or we could be part of something that I think is really amazing in the state of South Dakota, and that's why I appreciate being here.
Well, that concludes our panel discussion. Thank you. Yep.